In episode 20 of the CySec101 series, we're going to go through the basics of the Nmap tool, which is a very powerful tool for network enumeration, and this is a part of the networking module of the Cybersecurity 101 pathway of TryHackMe. This is actually a room I have not done before. I've done several rooms on Nmap, but on this particular video, we're actually going through new content, so you can see there's none of the green checkboxes here. And for the most part, I think we're going to get a decent introduction to Nmap. Of course, it is coming from the perspective of Cybersecurity 101, so we're not going to do too crazy of a deep dive, but there's a lot of other videos that I've done on Nmap, so if you really want to get some more advanced tactics, you can definitely go and watch those videos as well. If you'd like to support this channel, consider joining Hackaholics Anonymous, the premier channel for security professionals and hackers. We have 4 tiers: the Cyber Supporter, Agent, Guardian, and Master. Each tier gets their own Discord server and early access to content. The Agent, Guardian, and Master levels get exclusive content, exclusive downloads, monthly Python automations, live streams with me every month, plus much more. So to join, you can simply click the link in the description below. You can go to our homepage and click the join button, or you can go to youtube.com/@hankhackshackers/join to be able to join Hackaholics Anonymous. Now, without further ado, let us jump into the basics of Nmap. All right, so first, just to understand what Nmap actually does, if you've never seen it before, if you've never heard of it or used it before, the best way is obviously to imagine a particular scenario. So imagine you're connected to a network and you're using various network resources like email, web browsing, whatever. There are 2 questions that come up. The first is, how can we discover other live devices on this network or on other networks? And the second is, how can we find out the network services that are running on these live devices, for example, including SSH and web servers, right? So if you want to find out if they have web servers running or if they have secure shell open, so on and so forth. So one approach would be to do it manually. If you had to do it live on this particular IP range, for example, you can see a tool like Ping or ARP Scan, or you can even use some other tools to check the 254 IP addresses that are available on this particular subnet, right? So we did an entire episode on network protocols and network basics, and then you should know what a subnet looks like. So when you see the 24 right here, you would assume that on this particular section, we have these octets that are actually filled in. So 3 octets are filled in and the last octet is being changed. So that means on this particular subnet, you have 254 potential IP addresses, and you can technically do that, right? You could technically go ahead and do that manually using something like Ping, and then you can see which one of them respond and then just do manual information gathering or ARP scan or something like that. But Ping won't give any information if the target system firewall blocks ICMP traffic, so you would literally be stopped in your tracks. And then ARP scan only works if your device is connected to the same network, because it is doing an address resolution protocol, which requires MAC addresses, which means you need to be connected via Ethernet or Wi-Fi in the same network, yada, yada, yada. So this would be a very, essentially it would be a waste of time without an advanced and reliable tool. And with the right tools and enough time, one would have a list of the live hosts on a target network. We need a flexible tool. And so that brings us to Nmap, I guess what I'm kind of jumping at. So it says discovering the running services on a host is also equally time consuming. So if you want to see Telnet or see what other ports are available for Telnet, we can do that, I guess, with a variety of different tools. There's literally thousands of ports that could be connected to Telnet. So this will take a lot of time if you wanted to do it manually without the use of Nmap. All right. So finally, that's where this whole thing comes to play here. It's an open source network scanner that was first published in 1997. This is literally an industry standard tool. So anything in cybersecurity, pen testing, ethical hacking, Nmap is one of those names that everybody knows about. And at the very least, you should know how to run a basic Nmap scan. You don't need to know advanced scans to be dangerous. I feel like if you know just some of the basic scans, you'll be fairly functional in the, I would say, like the introductory and intermediate levels of cybersecurity, if you just know where to start and how to use Nmap, and we'll obviously be going into the details of that. So the objectives here is to first learn how to discover live hosts, find running services on the live host, distinguish the different types of port scans, and then detect the versions of the running services, control the timing, and format the output to make it easily readable, and so you can actually have a report that you can refer back to or send to other people, so on and so forth. So these are some of the key functionalities of Nmap, and we're actually going to be using them today. All of the networking videos that I've done at the beginning of this networking module, so basically these 4 videos right here, these are the ones that would be prerequisites for this room, and they are available in the CySec101 pathway. So if you have not checked them out, I would highly request or recommend that you go check them out, just to make your life a little bit easier as we move on with the rest of this particular video. So we are ready to go, and the virtual machine has already started. My attack box is up and running. If you have access to TryHackMe, you can use OpenVPN and your own computer to be able to attack the virtual machine that would be over here. So we've actually been given a virtual machine. This is our target machine that we're going to be scanning, and then the attack box that we have over here is a completely different IP address that we're going to be using to run this. So your computer, your own computer, could be an attack box if you have Kali Linux or essentially Nmap installed on any one of your machines, but you would need to connect to the TryHackMe servers using OpenVPN. For the purposes of this exercise, I'm going to be using the attack box that comes with TryHackMe, and I think that's all the disclosures I got to give you. So let's go into host discovery. So the first question that we had was, who is online, right? So the first question, who is online? This aims to find out how to use Nmap to discover the live hosts, meaning hosts that are online. We can do this in a variety of sophisticated, fancy ways. We need to understand that Nmap uses multiple ways to specify its targets. So for example, you can actually use IP range. So you could say, if you want to scan everything from 01 to 010, you can write it as, you have the subnet, and then you have 1 to 10. That would be one version of it. You can also use subnet mapping as well. So if you want to scan an entire subnet, you could actually do the 01, or this portion right here, and then you would go from 1, and then when you do the /24, you're essentially implying that for this octet, this is, or for this range, excuse me. So each one of these that is between these dots right here represents an octet. So when you have 3 octets, that would be a range of 24 inside of this subnet. And so this subnet mask has 24, meaning this very last octet is the one that we want to discover hosts to, which would essentially be the equivalent of doing the subnet here and then doing 0 to 255, very similar to what we did here. But instead of doing 0 to 255, you could literally just do /24, and then it would search for every single IP address that could potentially exist. And then if it's obviously a live host, it'll show it to you. You can also target a host name, meaning a domain name. You could actually type in a domain name to see if there are any open ports or any services or so on and so forth available on that domain name. So if you want to discover online hosts on a network, we can do the SN option, which is basically the ping scan. However, it's not limited like ping, because it can actually do other functionalities as well, meaning it could actually find ports and other things for you as well. So we should note that throughout this room, we're going to either run Nmap as root or using sudo, because we don't want to restrict the abilities. Running Nmap as a local non-root user will limit us to fundamental types of scans, so on and so forth. So we will, I would assume we're going to get some credentials to be able to do that as sudo. So if our IP address in this case would be this, then if we wanted to scan the entire subnet, we would be able to do it as such. So we've already discussed that. Then you would do nmap sn, and then you would basically ping everything on the subnet to see what you can find. So this is what the command itself looks like. They're running it as root, so they don't need to type in sudo. When you're already logged in as root, you can essentially remove the sudo portion of the command and just type in the entire command, and it will run it as root. And this is what the output basically looks like, right? So it'll start looking for a variety of different things for you, and I'll say, this is the IP address that's up, this IP address is up, this IP address is up, this one is up, Usually one is for the default gateway, and then 255 would be for the broadcast address. So it'll scan everything, and typically if the host is up, at the very least .1 and .255 will also be up, and everything in between, which is these ones right here, are going to be these various devices that are on that network. So because we're scanning the local network where we're connected to Ethernet or Wi-Fi, we can look up the MAC address of the device. Consequently, we can figure out the network card vendors, which is beneficial information that can help us guess the type of target devices that we have. And this is not something that you can do with ping. So that's one of those functionalities, right? You can actually find out the services and the versions of things that are connected to an individual IP address. When scanning a directly connected network, Nmap starts by sending ARP requests. When a device responds to the ARP request, Nmap labels it with host is up. So you can see this right here. So where do we see it? We can see Nmap report unknown. I feel like I saw host is up on here at some point. I literally thought I saw it. Maybe, oh, host is up. There we go. Host is up, host is up, host is up. Very good. Okay, cool. Scanning a remote network, so it's not connected to your Wi-Fi and it's not connected to your Ethernet, right? Remote network means that at least one router separates our system from this network. As a result, all our traffic to the target systems must go through one or more routers. Unlike scanning a local network, we cannot send ARP requests to this. So the system IP address that we have is this, and it belongs to this subnet or this network. In the terminal, we scan the network belonging to a completely different subnet where there are two or more routers or hops separating us. So this will be the command, very similar to the last command that we ran, but you can see that the output is very, very different than what you get over here, because this actually also gives you MAC addresses as well as the cards. So this is the card that you see right here. These are the network cards that they're talking about. This is actually available for pretty much every single MAC address that is connected to this. So on this one, we don't see that. We don't see the MAC address, and obviously we don't see the network cards that are connected to it. But we do see that obviously the first one is going to be up. These are up all here, and it'll go, and it basically tells us that there are 5 hosts that are up. By the way, a quick side note, if you hear sirens in the background, I'm literally recording this as there are fires all over the LA County area in Southern California. And I'm trying to avoid a bunch of anxiety, so I was like, okay, let me just get busy and start doing some recordings as well. But literally, as I'm recording this, the worst fires that have ever happened to Southern California are taking place. So it's kind of a crazy little situation that's going on, and our specific location is on evac alert. So they're letting us know that, you know, potentially they may let us know at any point that we need to evacuate. So you know, I have my go bags packed, and I have a bunch of water that we bought, and we have canned food and all that stuff, and I have power cables as well as several power sources that I bought for situations like this. So for the most part, we're prepared if we need to evacuate. I really hope we don't have to evacuate, but this is me literally attempting to avoid all of the scary thoughts that go on in my head by just trying to be functional and useful and create some videos for you guys. So that's a completely different side note. I have no idea if anybody's going to notice it or watch it or pay attention to this portion. It's a lot of people, I feel like they skip around in these videos. So just in case you actually did hear that piece, you know where my mindset is at during these recordings for tonight. So the Nmap output shows that 5 hosts are up, but how did Nmap discover this? To learn more, let's see some sample traffic generated by Nmap. And so we're looking at what we see over here, which is a Wireshark screenshot. And we did a few, or not a few, we did at least one video on Wireshark in this particular CySec101 training series, but there's a lot of videos that I've done on Wireshark. So if you want some more intermediate/advanced stuff, you can go check that out as well. But you should at the very least be familiar with this screenshot, this visual right here. So 11.1 is live and responded to the ICMP echo. 11.2 seems down. So Nmap sent 2 ICMP echo ping requests, 2 ICMP timestamps, 2 TCP packets to port 443 with the SYN flag set and 2 TCP packets to port 80 with the acknowledgement flag set. The target didn't respond to any of them, and we observed several ICMP destination unreachable packets from the 151. So if you pay attention to it, it's coming from our source IP, right? So what did we say that our source IP was? It was 6689, and then we're scanning anything that is on 11 dot something, right? So we are looking at 6689. Let me see if I can kind of zoom in on this a little bit. So these are our sources, right? 6689, 6689 is contacting 11 dot whatever, and 11.1 responded back to us. So echo reply came back to us. So we know that at least 11.1 is up. 11.2, we tried to reach out to 11.2 in a lot of different ways, TCP, ICMP, so on and so forth. And we tried to reach out to various ports that we see here, 443, 80, and there was even a timestamp request. And then the responses that we got from that, we didn't get any responses from that actually. So we only got responses from 11.151 apart from 11.1, which actually replied to us that we know that it's up. We got a bunch of responses from 11.151 and destination unreachable. And then 11.2, there's no responses on this screenshot. So that's basically what we see over here. And there's most of them are ICMP requests and replies, and then we have several TCPs, because when you do run SN as the option with Nmap, at the very least it'll try to see if it can find other ways to communicate with the desired IP range to see if it can get us any responses. Now it seems that this one was actually down because it didn't respond to any of the requests that we sent out. So it's worth noting that we have more control over how Nmap discovers live hosts, like the -PS, which is the port list that we can do, and then PA, which is another port list, and then PU, which is another port list. And these are all caps lock. And these are for a variety of different types of scans for the ports. So for example, you can do a TCP SYN scan, which is what this is, port SYN, and then TCP acknowledgement scan, which is port acknowledgement. And then we also have the TCP or the UDP scan, which is port UDP. And then via the given ports. However, this is beyond the scope of this room, but for the most part, essentially what that means is that the port list portion that you see right here could be, you could do port 80, and then you could do comma port 443, comma port 22, comma port 25, so on and so forth. And then that's how the port list would be. You could either separate them individually by commas, or you could do a range of ports where you say do 1 dash 1000, and it will scan everything from port 1 to 1000, basically. It is beyond the scope of this room, but that's essentially the gist of it. If you want to learn more about that, you can go and watch the other Nmap videos on the channel. So as a final point, Nmap offers a list scan with the SL option, S lowercase capital L, and this scan only lists the targets to scan without actually scanning them. For example, SL yada yada will list 256 targets that will be scanned. This option helps confirm the targets before running the actual scan. So this is not going to run the scan. It's just going to list what potentially can be scanned. And so if you do a range like this, there are 256 targets, because each one of these sections that you see here can go from 0 to 255. So it includes 0, and then it includes 1 to 255, which is total 256. So that's kind of what that looks like. SN, so lowercase s, lowercase n, aims to discover the live host without attempting to discover the services running on them. This scan might be helpful if you want to discover these services on a network without causing much noise. However, this won't tell us which services are running. If we want to learn more about those things, we need to do some other types of scans, and they tend to be more noisy, meaning something like this. Well, Wireshark isn't designed to be an intrusion detection system or a SIM or anything like that. So Wireshark can only be helpful if somebody who's looking at the data knows what they're looking for. But for an intrusion detection system, when you run these noisy types of scans, it'll actually pop up. And the intrusion detection, the IDS or the IPS or the SIM, any of those things will actually be like, hey, somebody's scanning us. Maybe we should block these IP addresses from scanning us. So that is what we got so far. So now, once the attack box is ready, which is ready, we're going to open the terminal to access Nmap and then use that to answer the questions for the rest of these things that we got over here. So what is the last IP address that will be scanned when your target is this and then 27, which is interesting. I know what it would be if it was /24, because that's basically what we're doing, and we'll scan that entire range. So what we are getting over here is that I think this is like a specific potential range. Maybe we're going to scan up to the 27th IP address or something like that. The hint says use Nmap's list scan SL to see what we can find. So whoops, I should not have done that. Now I can't zoom out of this thing. But at the very least, we can actually just run Nmap and then make that happen. So let's run Nmap real quick and then see what we can find. So I'm actually already logged into root. It seems that I don't need to switch users or anything like that. So this is what the command is going to be, right? It's going to be Nmap, and then we're going to do S_L. And then we're basically just going to put in the IP range, which is 192.168.0.1, and then we're going to do a /27. And that is the, I don't think that's the actual machine that we've been assigned. It isn't the machine that we've been assigned. So that's very interesting to kind of see. So it's not going to run the scan. That's the one thing that we did get. But it is going to list whatever is available for us when we actually type this type of a command out here. So I'm just going to press enter, and it's going to give me the last one, which is going to be 031. And it says 32 IP addresses. And this is what's very interesting to me. I don't know what this thing right here actually is representing, because it starts with 1 and it goes all the way to 31, and it's saying 32 IP addresses because it actually also does 0. I don't know what the 27 represents. I really need to find out what that represents, because that's going to bug me and I have no idea what that means. So we are going to go to our handy dandy AI friend to explain this to us. Okay, so this is actually a pretty super technical answer. All right, so this is the starting IP address of the range, right? /27 is the CIDR, the classless interdomain routing notation. It specifies the number of bits used for the network portion of the IP address. /24 is the common example. It would mean 24 bits are used for the network, leaving 8 bits for host addresses. So 256 possible hosts minus 2 for the network, which ends up being 254 actual usable hosts. 27 means 27 bits are used for the network, leaving 5 bits for the host, meaning 2 to the power of 532 possible hosts, meaning minus 2 for the actual the 1 and the 0 and the 255, or the 1 and 255, I guess, which means we would actually have 30 usable hosts. So the target identification Nmap would attempt to scan all the IP addresses within this range. This would typically include addresses from 01 to 030. Nmap would try to determine which of these IP addresses have active hosts. For each active host, Nmap would attempt to identify what services are running on the hosts. This often sends probes, operating system detection, yada, yada, yada. So it denied the portion where I did SN for the most part. Did I do SN? I thought I did. Let me see. Oh, I didn't. I just said that would be the thing. So we're doing an SL scan. So I didn't tell it about that. So I guess it's going to, if I understand correctly, this goes a little bit into the details of subnetting. So when we do 24, we are saying that we're going to leave 20, or we're going to take up 24 bits for the network. And each one of these is an octet, right? So if each one of these is an octet, that means that this is 8, this is 8, this is 8. Everything between these dots is an 8. So that'll be 24. If we are taking 27 bits, that means we're also taking 20. So in a range of 3, this would technically be 25, 26, 27. That's technically it. Or am I misunderstanding? I feel like I'm totally misunderstanding this. I think I'm going beyond the scope of this room. I apologize. I always go down these freaking rabbit holes. And if you ask anybody who's actually been a subscriber of this channel for a while, they will tell you the same thing. I always freaking go down these crazy rabbit holes because I'm trying to figure out extra information to try to answer these things for us. But basically the answer is this, right? The last IP address is the 168.0.31. That's going to be our answer. But I was just trying to find out what that /27 means, which I guess technically now we know, right? It's saying that it's taking 27 bits, right? That's basically what it says. It means that 27 bits are used for the network, leaving 5 bits for the host, which would be 2 to the power of 5, which would be 32 possible hosts. And then if there are 8 bits left for the host, which is what this does, that means 2 to the power of 8. Okay, so now I understand that actually. Now I get it. So when we do 24 like this, that means we are leaving the last octet, which would be 8 bits. So it would be 2 to the power of 8, which leaves us 256. If we are doing 27, we just take the total that's available for us, which is 32. If there are 4 octets, that means there are 32 bits available. So if we've taken up 27 bits, that means we are leaving 5 bits for the host. So 2 to the power of 5 means 32. That's actually how you do the calculation. I was trying to do it based on the numbers, the positions inside of these decimal points, but that's not the way to do it. So it's the 2 to the power of whatever bits would be the way that that's figured out. Okay, that's not required for you to know in CySec101. I literally went off the reservation and I kind of lost my mind a little bit because I really wanted to figure out the answer to that. But we actually got our answer, and we did it by running this scan right here. Very, very simple scan. Nmap S-SL, lowercase s, capital L, and then the IP range itself. And that's all we got. All right, so now let's move on to port scanning. So where the host scan was telling us who is online, port scanning is telling us who is listening. So from all of the services, or not all of the services, excuse me, from all of the devices that are online, on those devices, which ports are listening? That's basically what that means. So we used SN to discover the live hosts. We want to discover the network services listening on those live hosts. And we mean any process that's listening for incoming connections on either a TCP or UDP port. Common network services like web servers, which listen on ports 80 and 443, DNS servers, which is typically on UDP and TCP port 53. These are default ports, by the way. You can always change these when you're doing your configurations. By design, TCP has 65,535 ports, and then there's also 65,535 UDP ports, right? So there's a lot of ports that are available. So how do we find out what services are attached to these freaking ports? So scanning those things would be to attempt telnet to the port, I guess, is like the easiest and most basic way to do it. But if you're inclined to scan with telnet client, trying to establish a connection with every target port, in other words, you attempt to complete the three-way handshake with every target port. However, only open ports would actually respond appropriately. And then this procedure is not very different from Nmap's connect scan, but it is way more labor intensive. Instead of just running a connect scan with Nmap, you would be trying to connect to the freaking thing via a telnet client, which, in my humble opinion, unless it's an automated telnet client, if you're trying to do it manually, it's like, why would you do that? Because literally you would have to run, unless you can write scripts, right? If you know how to run scripts, then you should be all good in that regard as well. But the connect scan, which is a very nice TCP scan, it does the full three-way handshake, right? It does the three-way handshake for TCP, meaning sending out a synchronize, then getting a SYN acknowledgement and then an acknowledgement. That is a three-way handshake, right? We covered this in the networking basics. So our scanning machine has the IP address of this, and the target system has TCP port 22 open, port 23 closed. In the part that's marked with 1, you can see how the TCP three-way handshake was completed and later torn down with the reset acknowledgement pack by Nmap packet. The part marked with 2 shows a connection attempt to a closed port, and the target system responds with a reset acknowledgement immediately. So part 1, which is these 3 right here, the one, let's open this up, zoom in. 1, 2, and 3 packets right here are the packets for the TCP connect scan. So you see the SYN packet sent, and then the server responds with a SYN acknowledgement, and then we send out an acknowledgement, and now we have completed the connection, And then at the very end, we get a reset acknowledgement, which means the connection is now killed. So we are the 148 machine and we're trying to connect to the 211 machine, and we get our connection, and then at the very end we send the reset acknowledgement, meaning close this connection. And then when we try to connect to the 211 on a different port, so this was on port 22, which is the SSH port, when we try to do it on port 23, as soon as we send the initial SYN request, the SYN packet, we are immediately met with a reset acknowledgement, meaning that one is actually closed and we literally have nothing to do with it. So that's what it looks like when you have a full completed handshake and then one that wasn't even available or possible to connect to. Then you have the SYN scan, which is a stealthy scan. So as far as the noisiness of the scans are concerned, the connect scan is the noisiest because you're actually trying to complete a three-way handshake via a port, and that always shows up on even the most basic intrusion detection systems or SIMs or so on and so forth. If you're not trying to raise a lot of noise, but you're trying to see if the port is open, typically a SYN scan will actually do the job. So unlike the connect scan, which tries to connect to the port, completing that handshake, the SYN scan only executes the first step, meaning it just sends that SYN packet, and then the three-way handshake is never completed. The advantage is that it's expected to lead to fewer logs as the connection is never established, and hence it's considered a relatively stealthy scan. And we can do this with the lowercase, uppercase s, and then on this one it was the lowercase s and then the uppercase t for connect, or TCP, if you want to do it like that. Stealth is very easy. It's lowercase, uppercase. So SYN and a stealth, so on and so forth. So now we actually see the response the way that we previously ran it, except in this particular case where there was the 148 to 211, 211 to 148, 148 to 211, that whole handshake that was completed, right? So this is the actual TCP scan that we see right here. In this particular case, there was just a SYN scan that was sent, and then there was a reset acknowledgement that was sent back from the service. In this case, it's showing that the TCP attempt to a closed port. In this case, the exchange is the same as the connect scan, but you know, it's very similar to just running a SYN scan by itself, because literally it's just sending the SYN packet. So the marked with the 1 is showing listening reply with a TCP SYN acknowledgement packet. However, Nmap responded with a TCP reset packet instead of completing the TCP scan. So, okay, you know what? My bad completely. This is actually the SYN scan that's been completed. This is not the TCP scan. That is my bad completely, because the first one that we saw, it actually had 4 packets, and the 4th one was the reset. This is just the SYN, and then the SYN was acknowledged, and then we never sent the final acknowledgement. We immediately just sent a reset because we didn't want to complete that handshake or complete that connection. My bad, you guys. My bad. Okay, but the second one was pretty much the same thing, because the port 23 was closed, so the initial SYN request was never acknowledged, and so we were never able to make anything as far as a SYN scan connection. The UDP ports, although most services use TCP, many use UDP. Examples include DNS, DHCP, NTP, which is the Network Time Protocol, SNMP, which is the Network Management Protocol, and VoIP, which is Voice over IP. UDP does not require establishing connection and tearing it down afterwards. Furthermore, it is very suitable for real-time communication, such as live broadcasts or, you know, streaming on Netflix, for example, that also uses a UDP typically. All these are reasons to consider scanning for and discovering services that are listening on UDP. The lowercase s, uppercase u is the scan for UDP services. Because UDP is simpler than TCP, we expect the traffic to differ. The screenshot shows several ICMP destinations unreachable, port unreachable responses as Nmap sends UDP packets to closed UDP ports. So we can see the protocol has changed to UDP instead of TCP. It's all going from 148 to 211, and then we're trying to connect to a variety of different ports, and all of the responses that we get from 211 to 148 saying destination unreachable, port unreachable, are the closed ports. They're not available, right? And the same thing with this final response that we get at the bottom right here as well. So these are closed ports that we're getting with the UDP scan that we're running. Now, limiting the target ports, so running for the most common 1000, which is 1 to 1000 basically. This might not be what you're looking for, therefore Nmap offers you the option to actually do a variety of other things. So -F is for fast mode, which scans the 100 most common ports instead of the most common 1000 ports. It's actually, so it's the most common 1000 ports, my bad. It's not 1 to 1000. It is the most common 1000 ports. I do believe that it is 1 to 1000, but it may not necessarily be 1 to 1000. It's just scanning the most common 1000 ports. 3389, for example, is the port for remote desktop, which is something that's for Microsoft, and that is not in the 1 to 1000 range. It's literally above 1000. So that is actually my bad. Again, my bad on the misinformation. -F is for fast mode, which scans the 100 most common ports instead of the 1000 most common. And then if you do P, so lowercase p, and then just giving it a range, it'll specify the range of ports. So for example, if you do P10 to 1024, it scans from port 10 to port 1024, while doing P and then -25 will scan all the ports between 1 and 25. And if you do -P-, it scans all the ports, which means every 65,535 ports. So this thing will take forever, just so you know. When you do -P-, it takes a long time to complete that scan because it's literally scanning for 65,000 ports. So this is our summary. We have S-T that does a TCP connect. S does a SYN scan, which is just a stealth scan. S-U is the UDP scan. -F would be fast mode, which does the 100 most common. And then you can do -P range and then specify a range. And then -P- scans all the 65,000 plus ports. So now let's do some scans. How many TCP ports are open on the target system at the target machine that we have? So we're looking for TCP ports, and basically what I'm going to do, I'm not going to run the entire freaking 65,000. I'm literally just going to do the Nmap, and I'll do lowercase s-T, and I'll do 10, 10, 185, 58. I'm just going to run that, and that was very quick. So we have a total of, let's see here, this was the command nmap S-T, and I gave it the IP address. So we have how many? It says scan and it doesn't tell me. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 is what I have open. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And find the listening web server on that IP address and access it with your browser. What is the flag that appears on the main page? So if we look at these things just to see what the services are, okay? So this is an echo service on port 7. This is a discard service, which essentially it's kind of the equivalent of null, which just gets rid of whatever goes there. This is the daytime, which gives us just a date and time, and it's like a calendar type of a thing, just checking the date and time at the time. QOTD, I would assume that's quote of the day, I guess. And then this is secure shell. And then there's only one that is an HTTP service, which implies that that is actually the web service, because HTTP is the protocol for internet services, right? Hypertext Transfer Protocol. So I need to open up my browser, and the way that we do this by just going to the IP address. So I always do HTTP : / and then just do the IP address, and then you would do the colon again, and then you would do I think it was 8008. Is that what it was? Was it 8008, 8005? Let me see. Let me go find that. It's easier if I just make this full screen real quick. Okay, yeah, it is 8008. So there we go. And this is what that looks like. 10, 10, 185, 18, and then you do that colon, and then you do 8008, meaning you want to connect to port 8008 on that IP address, and then press enter. And now it says unable to connect. So that is interesting. Let's see if we can fix this. Oh, that's my bad. It's not 185.18, it's 185.58. That's what it is. And there we go. Okay, cool. There's the flag. I was like, I knew I was doing it right. I don't know why it wasn't working. And it was because I mistyped the IP address. Cool beans. There we go. We got it. Now we can move on to version detection. With version detection, we can now actually get specific information about each individual port. So for example, if you do the -O option, it'll give you the operating system, the OS, right, detection, and then triggers that to get various indicators to make an educated guess about the target operating system. So in this case, it's running Linux 4.x or 5.x running. So if we look at it right here, we can see it. So for port 22, it's open, the MAC address is this, device type is general purpose, running Linux 4.8 5.x, and then Linux kernel right here, and then 4.15 5.8, network distance 1 hop, right? And because we're getting the MAC address, it implies that we're on the same network, and then it only took 1 hop to get there. So that's kind of some of the things that we can conclude from this. But that's what we get from it. It actually gives you the operating system, or at the very least, a good guess on what the operating system would be. That's what O does. And notice that they also did a lowercase uppercase s, which means this is a SYN scan, a stealth scan, and then the O, and then we ran it on the IP address, and this is what we got. If you wanted to do service and version detection, you can do lowercase s capital V for version. That's how I remember these things. And then that's what we could run over here. And then we can see host is up and the port itself is here. SSH is here. The version of SSH that's running is OpenSSH. And then it's giving you the MAC address still. And then service info is the OS is Linux, but it doesn't give you everything about the Linux kernel. So notice that on this one, it gave you more on the actual Linux version that you have over here, as well as the Linux kernel, but there was nothing that had to do with what version of SSH was running over there. On this one, you actually get to see the version of SSH that's running, and then Ubuntu, so on and so forth, and it gives you Linux, but it doesn't give you anything about the Linux version or the kernel. If you wanted to force the scan, this is one of those interesting things. There's a possibility that the target host doesn't reply during the discovery phase, meaning it doesn't reply to the ICMP request, the ping. So consequently, Nmap will mark this host as down and won't launch a port scan against it. We can actually ask Nmap to treat all the hosts as online and port scan every host, including those that didn't respond during the host discovery phase. So that's what it means to force the scan. And you can do this with the PN, so capital P lowercase n option. And this scans the host that appears to be down, even though, you know, supposedly it's down. We're still going to scan it and see if there's anything available on the ports on that IP address. So capital O is the OS detection. S capital V, so lowercase s capital V is the service and version detection. Capital A does everything, and this is another one of those things that takes a long time. So if you do a capital A on all of the 65,000 ports, step away from your computer, come back in a couple of hours. It's going to take a while for it to finish that scan. If you do capital A, but you do it on one port, then it'll take maybe a couple of minutes, right? Because it's just looking at all the details for that given port. But for the most part, if you run it on, you know, the top 1,000 most common or even the top 100 most common, it'll take a minute for it to complete that. And then you have capital P lowercase n, which scans everything that appears to be down. So what is the name of the name and detected version of the web server that's running on our IP address over here? So I'm just going to go back to my full screen browser here. And so now we know that the IP address is on port 8008. So what I can do now is I can actually make this a little bit more customized, and I can do -P and then give it 8008 as the port, and then I'll do 10.10.185.58 and then press enter, and then that should give me the response hopefully fairly quickly. But it's running on port 8008. Here we go. So we got it's the light TPD 1.4. whatever, and we're just gonna copy that, and that is our answer. So paste, enter, and we are all good. So you can see that it's fairly simple to run these things. It's not complicated. But it's very useful, right? It's very insightful. And interestingly enough, again, I stand corrected, even though this is not on the same Wi-Fi as me, we were still able to get the MAC address, which tells me that when you run SV or when you run -O, it will get you the MAC address even if it's not on your specific network, on your Wi-Fi or Ethernet network. So my bad, I'm like messing up with all of my information. So hopefully you're paying attention to all of these things, and when I make these little corrections, you can actually walk away with the correct information. All right, so let's talk about timing. So how fast is fast? Nmap actually gives you options to control the scan speed and timing. And this is where a lot of these flags that you see right here come in. So running the scan at the normal speed might trigger an IDS or other security solutions. It's reasonable to control how fast the scan should go. It'll give you 6 timing templates, and the name says it all: paranoid, sneaky, polite, normal, aggressive, and insane. So you pick the timing template by its name or number. For example, you can do T0, capital T and then 0, which means you're super paranoid. So you want the timing to be as slow as possible so you're not going to get detected. You can also do T space 0, or you can do T and then type out paranoid to opt for the slowest timing. And in the scans below, we'll launch a SYN scan targeting the 100 most common TCP ports, which means lowercase s, uppercase s, and then the IP address, and then you do capital F for fast, and it'll do the 100 most common. We repeated the scan with different timings, 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. In the lab setup, Nmap took different amounts of time to scan the 100 ports. The table below could give you an idea, but you will get different results depending on the network setup and target system. So same scan, same exact scan, right? Except the first one was T0, meaning paranoid, and it took 9.8 hours against the 100 most common ports, okay? You took T1 sneaky, it took 27 minutes. Polite took 40 seconds. Normal took 0.15 seconds, and an aggressive took 0.13 seconds. So it's a very big leap to go from 9.8 hours, pretty much 10 hours, to 0.13 seconds. Do you see how difference is? So the same scan, literally same exact scan, and it's going against the top 100 most common ports. But 100 ports could take 9.8 hours, or it could take less than a second, depending on where you're at. In the screenshot, we can see that the time that the Nmap sent the different packets. In this screenshot below, when scanning the timing being T0, we can see that Nmap waited 5 minutes before moving to the next port. So this is what you see right here. 300 seconds resembles 5 minutes, right? 600 seconds, and then 600 seconds again. So this was all, I guess, the same thing. And then 900 seconds, 1200 seconds, 1500, 1800. So it's basically adding 5 minutes to every single ping or SYN packet that's going out. And then it's going against, there was 2 that went against port 22, so that's why we see that. But there was all these various ports that are going out, and these are the 100 most common ports that are happening. So every 5 minutes it's sending out a packet, right? That is very paranoid, right? It's trying to avoid being detected. This is the one that waited 15 seconds between every 2 ports because we set the timing to T1. And so you can see that here as well, 15, 30, 45, so on and so forth. Same list of ports right here. And then when we went to T2 and it dropped to 0.4 seconds, you can see that here as well. You can see the progression of how much quicker these ports are. T3 dropped it to running as fast as it could potentially, it's now not even counting in seconds anymore. It's counting in milliseconds, right? And then we don't have any other screenshots. But that's basically what you can take away from this, is that when you go paranoid, it really takes its time. And then when you go aggressive, then it'll happen in a matter of a second or two. A second helpful option is the number of parallel service probes. The number of parallel probes can be controlled with the min parallelism and then the number of probes, and max parallelism, number of probes. These options can be used to set a minimum and maximum on the number of TCP and UDP port probes active simultaneously for a host group. By default, Nmap will automatically control the number of parallel probes. If the network is performing poorly, Dropping packets, for example, dropping packets, the number of parallel probes might fall to 1. Furthermore, if the network performs flawlessly, the number of parallel probes can reach several hundred, meaning there are several hundred probes going out at the same time trying to find these various open ports for you, which is why you can have quick responses, or as quick of a response as you can. For example, less than a second to scan 100 ports, right? But if it's not responding, if the packets are being dropped, then it's just going to use one probe because it wants to make sure that it actually gets everything and the network isn't being responsive, so on and so forth. Another option would be the min rate or max rate. They control the maximum and minimum rates at which Nmap sends packets. This provides the number of packets per second. It's worth mentioning that the specified rate applies to the whole scan and not to a single host. The last option we will discover is the host timeout. This option specifies the maximum time you are willing to wait, and it is suitable for slow hosts or hosts with slow network connections. So T0 to 5 ends up giving you the paranoia rate, right? The sensitivity rate. It's the timing template. So you can go from super paranoid or just not paranoid at all, not giving an F, and then just running as many as fast as you possibly can. Minimum and maximum parallelism is the number of parallel probes, and then minimum maximum rate is the maximum rate packets per second that are being sent out, and then host timeout is the maximum amount of time to wait for a target host. So you can say host timeout and give it 300 seconds, and it would say that is 5 minutes, right? So what is the non-numeric equivalent of T4? And we see over here, which is aggressive, is the non-numeric equivalent of T4. There we go. So dash capital T, aggressive, is how you can actually say the same thing as T4. You want it to be aggressive. All right, so now let's get some instructions on how to actually generate some output files for ourselves. So when I think of output, I think of an output file, but the way that they're talking about output is how verbose the response is going to be and what you're going to end up seeing, and then how you can debug things. So I'm just jumping to all the wrong conclusions today. It focuses on two main things: showing additional information while a scan is taking place, which is called verbose or verbosity, and then showing the file format to save the scan report. Okay, I guess we are going to be talking about actual output files. So in some cases, the scan takes a very long time to finish or produce any output that will be displayed on the screen. Sometimes you might be interested in more real-time information about the progress. The best way to get more updates while it's happening is to enable verbosity. Consider the following terminal output without verbosity, which is what we see over here. And it's just a stealth scan against this subnet, right? You can see that these are the results, and then it took 41 seconds, and then this is basically all the output that we got onto the screen. There was one port that's open, and that's it, right? That's what you get when you don't do verbose. Now you do the same exact thing, except you just add the verbose at the end. They did remove the stealth scan part of it, so they did not enable stealth scan. They just enabled verbosity. And then now you can see a very different type of an output. So you can actually see as it's going, right? So this resembles basically the in-between between .2 and then .253. So you can imagine that it went 3, 4, 5, 251, 252, 253. So it scanned all of those things, and all of it was printed onto the screen, as well as these various messages that are attached to it. And then there was a situation saying, okay, now we're doing a stealth scan at this particular port or this particular IP address. And then this IP address, we are now going to scan 1,000 ports on it. And then these are the results that we're getting. Discovered an open port, and then stealth scan was completed. And this is the complete report for this. And then you get to see the 902 port. So the same port is officially being listed as an open port, which we saw exactly over here as well, except in the process of it displaying everything onto the screen. I'm doing this, now I'm doing this, now I'm doing this, now I'm doing this. Oh, I found an open port. Okay, now I completed my scan. And then this is the official report that you get from me right here. So -V is more than enough of a verbose output, but you can also do very verbose, or very, 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 very verbose, right? Like you could just add as many freaking V's as you want. Not as many, but you can go up to 4 V's. You can specify the verbosity level directly, for example, V2 or V4. You can even increase the verbosity level by pressing V after the scan has already started. I didn't know that. That's actually very useful to know. Sometimes I just cancel the scan and restart it and put -V. I had no idea that you can actually just press V after the scan's already started. That's very useful. If all this verbosity does not satisfy your needs, you must consider the debugging level output. Similarly, you can increase the debugging level by adding more Ds. That's what she said. You can go up to D9. Before choosing that, make sure you're ready for thousands of information and debugging lines because it's going to give you a lot of output. Now, we're talking about saving it inside of an output file. So we would need to save the scan results. Nmap gives us various formats. You can do ON file name, which is just a normal output, OX, which would be an XML output file, OG, which would be a greppable output used for grep, and AWK, awk, which are search patterns. Well, grep is more like searching for strings. You can actually use patterns, but awk has its own syntax for finding various types of patterns. And then OA, which is outputting in all major formats, which will generate multiple output files for you. So if we actually do OA and then save it into gateway, the name will be gateway, right? So the name of the file will be gateway, but it will be gateway.xml, gateway.txt, so on and so forth. So this is what you get: Nmap, gateway nmap, gateway XML, right? These are the things that you get. So what option must you add to your nmap command to enable debugging? And that is throwing some D's on this thing. So -D is the answer for that. And before we jump into the conclusion over here, which is actually a really nice little cheat sheet that we have based on everything that we just discussed, I do want to show you one other quick little tool here that is very, very useful. So this is what I teach in every command line or any kind of Linux and even Windows, right? So the Windows syntax is different, so I don't want you to think that you can use this command for Windows. But if you're using any kind of Linux machine or even Mac OS, because it runs on Unix, which is a very similar operating system, you can do man, and then you can do nmap, and then it'll give you the manual page for nmap, which tells you, okay, this is what it is. This is a basic synopsis. And then you can do the scan type and the options, and that's basically what you can run. And then you can go throughout the description of it if you want to, which is like a very lengthy description. And then you start seeing examples of this. So nmap-a t4 on this domain name, and it'll start giving you what the output will look like. And then if you go down, it'll give you what all of the various options are that you can actually run for nmap. So for example, you can run the IL, which would be input from a list of hosts and networks, and then you would have to give it a file name, right? And that would take an entire list of hosts or networks, and it will start scanning against all of those. And in this regard, you would need to do an O and then actually output the report, because it's going to be a massive report. There are the host discovery options you have, there are the scan techniques that you have, and then there's something very, very interesting that is available, is the script scans. So these are actually pre-embedded scripts. These are scripts that come with Nmap, and you can actually, there's an entire list of scripts that are available, and you can even get a help menu for each one of the scripts, and you can even get a list of these scripts that are available to see what types of scripts are available and what you can run. And then some of them actually do vulnerability scans as well. So you could do a vulnerability scan within Nmap, which is, again, very, very useful. And then these are all of the output options that you have, and there's just a bunch of stuff. So there's a lot of options that are available to use Nmap. And then this is what the use of a manual page is like. So if you've never used this tool, or the tool that you're thinking about using, you can look at the manual page, and the manual pages are very extensive. Like, this is a very extensive, for each option, it's telling you this is what it does, this is how you can use it. So it gives you a lot of breakdown, a lot of good information, so that you know what to do if you've never used this tool before. Now, if you don't like reading and you just want somebody to guide you through these things, then I recommend going to check out the Nmap videos that are on this channel. I do give you a forewarning. At the time that I was recording those videos, I was using one of those plug-in headphones that they're like the wired headphones that connect to your computer, and it's kind of like the cell phone headphones, the white wired headphones. And I was wearing a hoodie the day that I was recording them, so the hood of my hoodie was scrubbing or rubbing against the the mic, so there's like scratchy noises, and people have commented on it and people were upset about it, and I just did not re-record those things because it took a while to record those things. And unless it's absolutely necessary, I do not re-record content, but the content is still good. If you can get past the occasional little scratching noises, the content is still very solid and you'll learn a lot about Nmap. So full disclosure, there's a little bit of scratchy noises on those things. I am now in a much different recording environment, and I have a better microphone, and the quality of the noises, or the quality of the voice is better, and whatever, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so let us go into our conclusion and summary, and then I'll give you a couple of extra notes at the very end, and then we'll wrap this video. In conclusion, we have ran a variety of different scan types and options with Nmap. It's important to understand that we actually ran Nmap with sudo privileges because we were signed in as root, and we were able to use a lot of its features. Now, if you wanted to run something like a stealth scan, the SYN stealth scan, it'll actually ask you to run it with sudo privileges, and it will cancel it out. So it'll either say run with sudo, or it's just going to default to running a connect scan, because a stealth scan technically is used for pen testing, ethical hacking, and it wants to make sure that you actually have sudo privileges, or you know what you're doing, so on and so forth. So that was one of the important things that you need to keep in mind, that the couple of scans that we ran that was a stealth scan, it is required with sudo privileges or root privileges to be able to run some of these things, because they are reserved for administrators and root users. These were some of the massive amounts of, just a few of the massive amounts of options that are available inside of Nmap. In the network security module that we did, the 4 rooms that are connected exclusively to Nmap, it's not part of CySec101, it's a completely different series of videos that we did, but there are 4 rooms that were a part of Nmap, and I have recorded all of those rooms. So you actually see that we see all of these check marks that are over here, and then there's the Nmap live host discovery, basic port scans, advanced port scans, and post port scanning. All of those videos are on this channel, and you can go find them to get more information about Nmap if you're curious how to use it. It is a very powerful tool, and if you're serious about security, whether as a pen tester or as defensive security, I would recommend you learn how to use Nmap. And then these are just a variety of different options that are available on the video that we just ran today. And you can, of course, go ahead and look at the manual page for Nmap, and you will get a much more detailed outline of what each one of these options actually represents and how to use them, and it'll give you even sample commands that you can use to actually create those Nmap commands, so you can use these various options that are available for you. So what kind of scan, this is the final question, what kind of scan will Nmap use if you run Nmap this just basically with local user privileges? And that would be the TCP scan. So what would we call it? TCP connect scan? So Nmap TCP scan. So if we just run it, basically it'll run as the TCP scan. That's basically what I know. But let me see. I feel like I'm not TCP scan. I want to say it's TCP scan. Yeah, it is a TCP. I think it's actually, I think that's what they're looking for, is a connect scan. That's what they're looking for, yeah. Okay, that's, I got. Okay, very good. And so we're officially done with this video. So let me just give you a couple of extra pointers, and then we're out of here. Alright, so if you found this video useful, and if you want to get more videos like this one in the future, I do encourage you to like, subscribe, turn on the notification bell so that you get notified the next time a video comes out, especially the videos that are inside of the CySec101 series. There's also all of these videos that are on the channel that, for example, recently, Security Plus came out, and it's a 5 video series that has its own playlist. There's also the playlist for Linux Plus that came out, and there's a variety of other, you see all these different playlists that we have over here. So there's a lot of good content on this channel, and I do get recommendations from our community to create more content that is actually unique for you guys and is actually demanded by you guys. So it's something that I'm passionate about creating, and I just want to make sure that you get exactly what you're looking for as your connection and as your as the community. Essentially, this is for you, right? So Make sure that you drop a comment. Let me know what you think. If you have any questions, I'll answer your questions in the comments. If not, if it's a really good question, I'll create a video in response to your question. Or this entire playlist, the CySec101 playlist, is in response to Darnell Knight's comment, and I give him a shout out every time that I can remember to actually give him a shout out. And this is why we created it. So at the very least, say thank you, Darnell, in the comment section if you want, or just drop your questions or anything like that. Make sure that you like, subscribe, turn on the notification bell, all that good stuff, and of course drop a comment, even if you just want to say thank you. As another form of thank you, you can actually support this channel by joining the Hackaholics Anonymous membership community, which is the premier channel for security professionals and hackers. And we have 4 tiers that are available: the cyber supporter, agent, guardian, and master. And each tier gets their own Discord server and early access to content. But the agent, guardian, and master levels get exclusive content, exclusive downloads, monthly Python automations, live streams with me every month, plus a lot more. And to join them, you can simply click the link in the description below. You can also go to our homepage and click the join button, or you can go to youtube.com/@HankHacksHackers/join, and you'll be able to join the Hackaholics Anonymous community. I very much hope to see you inside of the Discord servers, even if it is just coming in as a very valued cyber supporter. But if not, I hope I see you in the comment section inside of the YouTube channel. It's your boy Hank Hackers, and at Hank Hacks Hackers, your favorite network and system attacker/protector. Love, peace, and chicken grease. If no one else loves you, Hank loves you. I'll see you in the next video. Later.